Good afternoon, good morning to all the participants, wherever you are. So it is my pleasure to be the moderator, actually to be the stand-in moderator for Dr. Frank Griffin, who is unable to join us this afternoon, as your moderator for the technical session 3, which is the Partnership for Impact, Understanding the Role of Tertiary Institutions in Pacific Waste Management for this third Clean Pacific Roundtable. Just before we begin, as a reminder, throughout the session, if you have any comments or any questions, please put them onto the chat and our technical team will be sending regular reminders. And at the end of this first panel, we will have time for Q&A. But just before we go into our wonderful panel, and we've got a list of excellent folks who are going to discuss what they're doing in the first discussion panel. And also in the second discussion panel, please allow me a few minutes to set the scene and to share a few comments about the role of tertiary and research institutions in the waste and pollution management sector. I think for all of us, there is no doubt that the tertiary and research institutions play an important, and you might say an essential role. We have heard from previous roundtable sessions, and I'm sure more to come, about the need to have good people, that the product or item is not the primary issue, but its management leads to waste and leads to poor waste management. And of the importance of education and awareness and communication programs are for changing hearts and minds. And that we heard yesterday that for a cleaner Pacific environment first starts with a cleaner Pacific mindset. And I should add, and body as well. So in preparation for this session, I was reminded by my colleague about the importance of partnership with tertiary and research institutions, but also in the importance of coming up with new technology that would help us. And just to name a few academic partnerships in which the Waste Division is partnering up with, is that we have many partnerships. So we have one with the University of Auckland on microplastics and fish ingestion. We have the USP study on microplastics in fish. We have Melbourne University who have just completed the legislative review. We have the University of Wollongong and Karen who are conducting a research on global and regional plastic legislation and framework. We have Margaret from the Newcastle doing gender and social inclusion. We have a number of PhD candidates and PhD students through the University of Newcastle. We have 2 working on waste. Palele and Awe from Fiji are working on microplastics and remediation of oil from submerged vessels, World War II wrecks and potentially polluting vessels. We have got the we've got the Major Projects Foundation 3-way partnership publication in a marine pollution bulletin. We have the University of Newcastle and Massey University Plastic Pollution Policy Gaps and Fact Sheets, which you've heard yesterday on the first day. We have the University of Newcastle Disaster Waste Management Capacity Building Training in Vanuatu with JPrism 2 and PackWaste Plus. We've got the Kyoto University in Japan partnership with JPrism 2 and many others. And you've just heard from the previous technical session about the importance of not just partnership with tertiary, but also partnership with the private sector, and about getting the right people at the same time in the same room where you'll see great results, such as the Monataka partnership. So partnerships are key, not just with the sector of tertiary and research institutions, which is often overlooked, but in everything that we do. But enough for me, and let me introduce to you the 2 panel discussions. So this session is about partnership, which is an important or is a core of successful sustainable waste management outcomes. In this session, we will focus on collaboration and tertiary institutions for meaningful impact. The first half of this session will highlight the benefits of partnership with academic institutions for enhanced capacity development, including upskilling and diversification. We will showcase undergraduate, postgraduate programs and courses, capacity development initiatives focused on promoting waste management for the Pacific, for our people. The second part of the session will provide case studies that highlight the benefits of partnering with academic institutions for research, innovation, and impact. So we have a very exciting lineup of speakers for you this afternoon. Let me introduce to you the different speakers. First, we've got Associate Professor Subramaniam from the Papua New Guinea Unitec. Dr. Subramaniam is an Indian engineer presently working as head of department for civil engineering in Papua New Guinea University of Technology. He has done his Bachelor of Technology in Civil Engineering and Master of Technology, Environmental Engineering from Indian universities. After that, he has done his PhD from Indian Institute of Technology and is greatly involved in India. He has 26 years of teaching and research experience and published many research papers in a highly acclaimed international journals and conferences. He will be speaking about the postgraduate course degree at the university, at the Unitec PNG, about his Master of Science in Solid Waste and Resource. I'll go to the next speaker and I'll introduce them all. Our next speaker is Associate Professor Sunil Herat, Waste Management and Circular Economy at Griffith University in Brisbane. Sunil is no stranger to the Pacific, and he's an Associate Professor in Waste Management and Circular Economy at Griffith University, Brisbane in Australia. He is the Program Director of the Master of Environmental Engineering and Pollution Control. He is a member of the Expert Subsidiary Group for Regional 3R and Circular Economy Forum of Asia and Pacific, managed by the United Nations Center of Regional Development. He is an expert on training programs in municipal solid waste management, hazardous waste management, cleaner production, and circular economy. He has conducted training and capacity building programs in Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, India, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Thailand, and of course in the Pacific Islands. And he is no stranger to us in the Pacific. He will be talking about capacity building training modules in waste management. And the final speaker for our first session is no other than Alan Broadfoot, who is the professor and the director of Newcastle Institute of Energy and Resources at the University of Newcastle in Australia. Professor Alan Broadfoot is the executive director of the Newcastle Institute for Energy and Resources at the University of Newcastle, which we call NEA. At NEA, Alan leads an ambitious agenda linking industry and academia for transformational research in energy, resources, food, and water. Alan holds a Doctor of Philosophy, Master of Engineering, and Bachelor of Electrical Engineering with honors from the University of Newcastle. An electrical engineer in various roles from 1985, Alan joined electrical design and manufacturing company Control in 1991 and held senior management positions, including managing director and CEO from 2005 to 2010. He is a fellow of the Institute of Engineers Australia and was chair of the Australian Industry Group Hunter Manufacturing Council from 2004 to 2009. He is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, a fellow of the Royal Society of New South Wales, chair of the New South Wales Energy and Resources Knowledge Hub, and board member of the Tertiary and CRC CARE. He will be speaking this afternoon about the role of the, he was speaking this afternoon about the University of Newcastle Pacific Node Initiative. Let me stop there and we'll go through the first session and I will introduce the other speakers after the break for the second session. So let's start. Again, just a reminder to the all the participants who are linked up this afternoon that please write your comments and questions in the chat. To our first speaker, Professor Subramaniam, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. This is Sasha Fuller, the Pacific Node Coordinator from the University of Newcastle. Unfortunately, Professor Subramanianam couldn't make it today due to internet connectivity issues in Papua New Guinea. He has sent his slides through, and I thought I'd just make note of them because he has put the effort in. What we really wanted to highlight here with Professor Subramanianam's work is the partnership of universities in the Pacific with development aid. Here the partnership was with, yeah, if you can go to the second slide, please. Yes. Here the partnership was with ACP, so the African, Caribbean, Pacific European Union funds. The purpose here was to develop a master's coursework in solid waste management for the Pacific region. So next slide, please. So here it really was, the emphasis was on upskilling and enhancing the capacity of people in Papua New Guinea and the Pacific, making this coursework available to Pacific students. It was a Master of Science course, so it was for sciences, and the curriculum was developed with other people involved in the program across the African, Caribbean and Pacific. So the curriculum was really strong, because it had input from all of those places. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. Basically, we just wanted to highlight this to show that there is great opportunity to partner with development organisations for national universities throughout the Pacific to develop courses and curriculum from undergraduate to masters, and to be able to deliver that to their students in Pacific nations. So I think we'll just leave it there, and you can contact Professor Subramanian directly if you have any questions. Thank you.
Sasha, thank you for that. And our sincere apologies that the professor wasn't able to join us, but you have the contacts in the on the Clear Pacific website, and you have the information that we will share once we have consent to share the PowerPoint. We'll move on to our next speaker, which is Dr. Sunil Herat, who will be speaking to us.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to make a presentation during this third Cleaner Pacific Town Roundtable. The topic given to me today is capacity building training modules in waste management. First of all, I want to start with the question of need for capacity building training. So as we know, the role of waste management is changing significantly from a limited scope of dealing with waste to a broader scale of concepts like resource recirculation and circular economy. So there's a need to keep keep this knowledge updated, and also we need to have a good knowledge about the models, the institution models, the business models, and the financial models to deal with the waste streams. And also we have newer tools emerging to manage the waste for the waste managers. And also the waste management and resource recovery is seen as a journey rather than a destination, because there is so much happening, so much being advanced. The knowledge is being advanced continuously. So the sharing extensive experience is also another part of capacity building program. So basically, if you look at the process of capacity building, it's a very important thing to look at, because the success of a capacity building program will depend on how it was designed and conducted. So the main requirement here is that we one of the key messages here is to consider is that we should not be limited to technical know-how only, but we should also cover the non-technical aspects. So these non-technical aspects include the financial aspects, institutional, human resources, political, social, and so on, which is normally forgotten in many training programs, because we tend to consider the importance of the technical aspects, which is important, but the non-technical aspects will support those technical aspects. So without the non-technical part, the technical knowledge will not survive. This is particularly important for the Pacific region. I have quite a bit of experience in the capacity building side of things. There are a lot of non-technical aspects which need to be taken into account when it comes to the unique situation in dealing with the waste streams in the Pacific region. So apart from the content and the expected outcomes, the equally important is the process involved. So I have highlighted that. And the important thing also is that we are dealing with mature professionals in the region, the waste management practitioners who have many years of experience. So we need to make sure that the training program or the capacity building program is different to a typical university teaching course, which the academics we do on a day-to-day basis. So the problem-solving approach is the key part of the equation here, where we talk about formal lectures. So the interaction is the main thing with the participants. Case studies, especially the case studies related to the region, which is very important. And as I say in the last dot points, the long-lasting learning can only be accomplished when the trainees apply their newly gained knowledge to their own tasks, which is the very important concept. So the step-by-step approach is that while we are delivering the lectures, we also encourage participants to answer any questions based on the local problems, develop scenarios in the workshop settings, and participants should be encouraged to tackle the real issues from their local situations. So during the program, it is very important to have this mixture of formal lectures, formal classroom sessions, and then the interactive sessions which we share each other's experiences and talk about, do some scenario analysis. So to explain that further, I just want to highlight the program I have been involved in the region for SPREP during 2013 to 2016. And the program had about 60 participants been through that program during these 3 years. So the highlight of that was that we delivered the quality training for the participants, got a sound knowledge of what I call the hardware, the technology, and the software, which is the policy and the strategy aspect of the equation. So the ultimate aim of that program was creating the local champions, and we did. And out of the 60, I'm pretty sure there's so many who are in this program, who are in this conference, who will confirm what I'm trying to say here. So the program consisted of 3 modules. The first module was related to waste management techniques, where we where we discuss everything related to waste generation, to waste collection, transfer, recycling, composting, all those areas related to the waste management. And then the second module, we specifically looked at the landfill management, because as you know, it's very important area in the Pacific region, especially looking at the relevant designs for the landfills and so on. And then third module, we looked at the hazardous waste management, especially as you know, the pack waste project. There is a lot of big consideration given to the hazardous waste streams like e-waste, disaster waste, and so on. So we went through that as well. So the program was very successful. We had formal lectures, daily presentations, field visits, and so on. And that was the outcome of that program. So moving forward, I just want to talk about some of the work I'm doing at Griffith. I'm looking after the postgraduate program in environment engineering, where we cover waste management, which is covered by myself, and my other colleagues cover air, water, noise, contaminated sites, and so on. So the program is designed as a flexible learning program, where we have online offerings and classroom sessions as well. The idea is that to give a more broader training to the participants, and this is especially designed for people who have some experience and who want to upskill their knowledge. So you know, the website here I have given will have all the details if you want to look at. Also, I'm also happy to answer, provide any information necessary. And so that's all my presentation. I know it is very short, but hopefully I have given some important points there. And I'm now happy to answer any questions or engage in the discussions. Thank you very much.
Sunil, thank you very much for that brief but very good and important presentation about capacity building training modules in waste management. And we quite fondly remember the Fiji National University training programs, which I'm sure many of the participants who are listening were active participants during that session. So thank you very much for that insightful presentation. You mentioned about the technical aspects as well as the non-technical aspects, which is just as important for us in the Pacific, about the step-by-step approach and the step-by-step process, and also how it values the building up of local champions. And we can see that through the training, many of the current faces in waste management were recipients of your training, plus trainings that were done prior to that as well. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to our third and our final speaker for this first panel discussion. And let us hear now from Professor Alan Broadfoot from the University of Newcastle, who will speak to us about the Pacific Node Initiative. Alan, the floor is yours.
Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Alan Broadfoot. I'm from the University of Newcastle. I'm the Executive Director of the Newcastle Institute for Energy and Resources. What I've been asked to talk about today is the collaboration model we have between university and SPREP for delivering research into the region. Of particular note was the fact that we actually signed the MOU between the two organisations at the very first Clean Pacific conference held back in 2016. So we're talking about a successful relationship that was established through this roundtable, and also is now matured over the last 5 years. What I believe that underpins the success of our collaboration has been the fact it's not simply about research projects, it's about focusing on our capacity building, not only for ourselves, our academics and our students, but also the partners that we work with and the communities in the region. It's about how we meet together collectively the challenges that we face. And another part and part of this is the fact is that we need to prioritize. We need to be able to focus on what has maximum impact. And by working through SPREP and various forums like the Roundtable and also their AGMs, it gives us the ability to understand what those challenges are and what the priorities are. For us, it's not a coincidence that we're very much focused on climate change resilience, ecosystem and biodiversity protection, waste management, pollution control, and environmental governance, because these are shared goals between the two organisations and the partners that we support. It's also about the fact of making the model flexible. You can't write a fixed model that's going to last 5 years. We've got to be able to adapt to as changing circumstances and the changing needs of the communities that we support. It's about creating a platform more than anything about research excellence and innovation and its flow-on benefits, but not simply focusing at the application of technology, but looking at both the framework of economic, social impact, and also the delivery and jobs growth, which underpins success of a lot of sustainability within the region. The success of the collaboration can best explained by its functional model, which consists of 4 major elements. The first of these is applied research. This is where we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we're drawing on a broad base of knowledge that already exists and translating so it becomes relevant to the regions that we support. It's also about leveraging extensive research programs we're undertaking in other regions and working out how we can apply this directly to applications in the Pacific. And also, more importantly, is that for this to be enduring, we need this rapid deployment of the knowledge as it's created into skills. This is what empowers communities through training, both PhDs, but also in deployment through the local education systems. It's also about if you're going to create new knowledge and you're creating new skills, together this creates enterprise. This is about jobs. This is also an enduring element of success, not only providing solutions to the problems that we have now, but having preventative actions to be able to go forward and protect the communities from this reoccurring. And to both organisations, equally important is knowledge brokerage. It's through these events with the Clean Pacific Roundtable and different training seminars we run in the districts is how do we transfer this knowledge so that other people can benefit from it. We could give many examples of successful outcomes of this collaboration, but the one I'm most proud about is our embedded PhD program. This is where we work with SPREP to identify critical research projects when implemented would give maximum benefit and impact on the communities. And we achieve this by giving opportunities for Pacific Islanders to actually work on the projects through a PhD program. It's embedded because they're not limited to just simply coursework on campus. It was about working in the field with partners and also back at the SPREP campus and using the analytic facilities back here in Newcastle. It was very much about that capacity building we talked about before. It's developing and strengthening research, advancing the collaboration between partners, and more importantly, developing research leadership through these students as they advance their career, as they return to their communities post their graduation from their PhD program. In the last part of this presentation, I just want to focus on examples in waste management and pollution control, which is the theme of what the roundtable is all about. What we try to provide here is 5 examples which provide a good cross-section of what that activity has been. The first one is about train the trainer. It's about disaster waste management in conjunction with the government of Vanuatu, JPRS and 2 and SPREP. The next 2 examples of the embedded PhD programs I spoke to. The first one was microplastics and the impact on human health, looking at the river system in Western Fiji. The second one is about bioremediation of oil from World War II wrecks. This is a challenge of many countries in the Pacific. We're looking at leveraging our research that we're already undertaking in Newcastle, and then working with industry partners and governments to be able to apply that into the region. We also, importantly, we take our knowledge and translate it back into policy. The project there is a plastic pollution policy gap analysis and development of fact sheets in partnership with Massey University, Environmental Investigation Agency, the Centre for International Environmental Law. It's also about not being single dimensional. It's not about simply the application of the technology, as I mentioned before. We've undertaken work in gender and social inclusion, considerations for sustainable waste actions in the Pacific. This was done in partnership with SPREP and the French Development Agency. What I was trying to demonstrate here is the importance of the wide partnership approach. It's about creating platforms for success. It highlights that we have to cover not only the solution through the technology and innovation, but capacity development and innovation. It's about policy, gender and social inclusion to be able to build a successful model. In conclusion, if I ask you to take anything away from this presentation today, is understand the benefit and investment into these type of collaborations that we have between SPREP and the University of Newcastle. I always say that the conversion of effort is what drives successful outcomes, working together for a common goal. To me, demonstrating the importance of these larger scale platforms where multiple partners can be involved and come and go. It's about the focus on capacity building to provide that collective solution and sharing that knowledge with multiple partners so that we just don't have to keep revisiting it. I think we always benefit from learning together. I'd also like to thank Cosy and his team, because it's their motivation, their efforts that actually drive this success. It's been a very successful 5 years, and I look forward to the next 5 years as we extend the programs that we've already developed. I'd also like to acknowledge Sasha Fuller. She's our Pacific Node Coordinator that is on campus with SPREP. She's been critical to that engagement. I always say that a good strategy has to have action, and having Sasha undertake her research in Samoa and also in conjunction to supporting the PhD was fundamental to its success. So to you all, thank you for listening to me today, and I hope you took something away from this presentation. Personally, what I take away is the motivation from the excitement of the people that have engaged in this, our academics and our PhD, to being given this opportunity. And I thank them for all their effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. I'm just taking over for a few seconds from Tony, but I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for not just your presentation this afternoon, but the partnership that SPREP has had with the University of Newcastle has been, I think, a tremendous example of how regional organizations and tertiary institutions like your university have been able to work together in a way that I think has demonstrated practical, tangible benefits to the region. And I wanted to acknowledge that because this is my last year and I'm finishing in a couple of months. So I wanted to acknowledge you, Alan, and of course your team, Sasha and others who have been fantastic in terms of the various ways in which our collaboration has been for the last couple of years. So wanted to say that. Can I also take this opportunity to thank Griffith University, who's also an important partner for SPREP. Like University of Newcastle, we also have an MOU with Griffith University, and we've collaborated on a number of different fronts. And of course, we also have an MOU with the University of PNG. So I think that these partners who have presented this afternoon show the value of value-added partnerships that SPREP has had with various tertiary institutions in the region. And for that, I wanted to just say thank you. And we look forward to our continued cooperation. So with that, back to you, Tony.
Mr. Kosi, thank you very much. And thank you very much to our three speakers, and to Alan, thank you very much. And also just wanted to also acknowledge the work of Dr. Sasha Fuller, who is the coordinator here for the program here at SPREP. I just wanted just to add, just to finish off as well, before we go on to the questions, is that I think that, as Alan has already said, is that the Pacific Node Initiative is a different initiative because it's targeted at developing our people who will be able to work in the field, get trained, get finished with the PhDs, and then go back into the communities to serve, as you have already mentioned, Alan. So I just wanted just to reiterate that important point that this initiative is targeted at our people to help our own communities in our region. So thank you very much to all the speakers. We've got a couple of minutes for questions and answers. Please, if I can reiterate, if you could put your questions on the chat. We have a question there already for Dr. Sunil, which you may have seen Dr. Sunil on the chat. The question is from SPREP. It's from our colleagues from Pathways Plus. So I'll read out the question, Dr. Sunil, and I'll hand it over to you to respond. So we at Pathways Plus are also in the process of developing training and capacity building courses and training based on country needs for waste management. Would it be possible for you to elaborate on the methodology for identifying these courses that were developed? Were they based on country needs through a consultative process, for example? Given the current pandemic, do you think online training modules, such as the use of module courses that are accredited to renowned institutions, would be beneficial? Keen to understand the process of developing the training needs for the Pacific. So thank you, Pathways Plus, for the question. And over to you, Dr. Herat.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, thanks, Nitish, for that question. It's a very long question. Yes, the journey was very long in this process. As you see, that we ran the program for 3 years. The initial delivery and the design of the courses was definitely done through a consultation process. SPREP leading the process, talking to the donor agencies as well as the country representatives. I think, and then the SPREP came with those contents which are vital to solve the problems in the region. Since that first offering, then what happened was that the program evolved, and one of the key inputs came from the participants themselves, and the case studies from the region was the strength towards the end, because at the beginning there were very few case studies, and towards the end, by 2016, we had numerous case studies coming from on the region. So yeah, definitely it is a consultative process, because as I said in my presentation, the training program has to be designed according to the local needs. So definitely that has to be taken into account. So the second part of the question was whether the Moodle type courses would be suitable given the current conditions. My personal opinion on that is that the Moodle courses are, we can get many courses in this under this program, or under this system, but what we have to be careful is that we need to make sure that these are Pacific oriented courses which are useful for the Pacific, and most of the courses can be very generic because that they are designed for a wide audience. So you can take parts of it, but I would not recommend to use those courses as a totally fulfilling situation. So the important thing here is that when you design these programs, I think we need to just make sure that we need to answer the question where we are at now. I think it's a very important question because there are good things happening in the Pacific, and there are things which are challenging. So where we are at is a very important question to ask before we design any programs. So from there, then we can see that where we want to go, and then we can develop the program based on that. So there's quite a bit of behind the scenes work needs to be done before we deliver these programs. So it is a lot of hard work to be done at the beginning. So that's my my input to that question. Hopefully I answered that.
I'm getting nods from the team here, so thank you very much, Sunil, for that response. What we have now is we've got a question from the floor here. So I'll hand over to Mr. Safanawandra, who will ask the next question.
Hello, gentlemen. It's Sefa from the UNEP Pacific office. I just had a few questions on some of the points that were raised during all three presentations. The first is just looking back at your experience, Sunil. What are the things we can avoid to make courses, once they're developed, be taken up by national universities and used to train? Maybe not as a general degree type course, but as looking at skilled personnel that are already working and getting them skilled up on specific things. Noting what you just mentioned about the Moodle courses and applying it in a general way. Yeah? The second is one of the issues you'll find is when people graduate from national universities in the Pacific, sometimes it's hard to get into the higher courses in Australia and New Zealand, where those other courses are available. Are there ways we can smooth that out through these partnerships? And the third one is just on the networking between universities who are working in the Pacific. I know there have been some attempts. What can we do to improve that? And as a final comment, just because Kosi made the comment he's leaving soon, I'm taking over from him in April. I just want to assure you that I'm also very much a supporter of what's happening in this area. Thank you.
Sefa, thank you very much. Please, any of the panelists who may like to take the floor first, please go ahead.
Alan, you want to go first, or?
I'll go first. Well, I'm research division at our university. There is a flexibility. I mean, the academic programs and accreditation, yes, it takes a while to recognise modules into feed-ins for into those courses for exemptions, etc. But what we have here with our collaboration with many of the universities is that delivery of short courses. There's also looking at micro-credentials. Sometimes you don't need a full degree to do what you have to do. You just, it's actually the legislation and regulations of the government involved about what accreditation they are seeking, and certainly we can package it that way. The biggest thing that we've found being successful is to actually translate the research back through agreed programs through the STREP partners so they can deliver it into their format, which could be simply a separate level of certification through those bodies rather than us having to issue the bodies. That's one approach. In terms of collaboration, there's multiple collaborations between universities in the Pacific, but I've learned from experience is the collaboration between the academics is what we have to foster. It's like having a party where no one turns up when two university administrations sign a contract, the MOU. So we need to find it's forums like this where, when we haven't got COVID, that we come and meet, and then what we've found is we've got multiple projects where there's multiple universities involved because problems are now complex and you can't get it from a single discipline. You can't get it from a single framework. You have to seek the experience of the many and work together, not simply at the academic level, but the practitioners level in the region, because they have the local knowledge. Well, what I found is the best approach is not to educate people, but to leverage and share information so they can use it in a relevant way. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so that's, I think you answered the questions. I'll try and add a few more there. So the what has happened in the recent past is that, at least a couple of years, that the education, the tertiary education has changed quite a bit from like a classroom teaching into more to suit the industry very much. So while we have still we have the traditional first year, second year, third year courses for the undergraduates, we have developed a number of courses to suit the working professionals who cannot attend the campus, physically attend the campus. So the types of offering, the method of offering has changed, and also the content has changed as well, because like I mentioned before, if you're looking at the Pacific situation, we need to change the design of the courses definitely from a the fundamental knowledge type courses. The other thing we have also developed is that the recognition of the experience. I think this is very important for the Pacific because all of you have enormous amount of experience in the waste management field. And we need to recognize that as prior learning, and we need to give credit towards that sort of activity. I think it's very, very useful. So, so for example, if you're enrolling in a master's program, we have provisions to give a certain amount of credit as prior learning, formal as well as non-formal learning. So that's one of the things which is also useful. To the second question about enrolling in courses in Australia, we have the program, and for example, we have a few students going through the master's program. I guess the challenge is the funding part. So if there is a funding available, the rest is quite easy. We can the undertaking the program is not a problem. Admission shouldn't be a problem because we also recognize experience for certain programs. And in the master's program I'm looking after, although it is called the Master of Environment Engineering, we have provisions for people who have done the environmental science degrees to enroll as well. So so there's a flexibility from an enrollment side as well. But as I said, the funding is the question here, where the funding is coming from. So so overall, I think there's always the opportunity to upskill. I think one of the important things we also discuss in our training program is that, because at the end of the training program, we certainly get a certificate, but we need to go beyond that and have some sort of a formal degree to be awarded to these trainees, so that they can use that for their career development. So that's from me.
Thank you very much for that initial response to Safa's, and he's got more questions to come. So we will give Safa the floor again to ask his follow-on question.
Just while you're here, just the area of science and research to policy and negotiations. I know we've already started along that line. We had a session on the first day with Sasha and her group on the fact sheet and that stuff. But I think it's something we need to build on more, how we can use the expertise we have within our universities and research institutions in the region to help us to do more effective engagement at the international level when you go to negotiations, and also the national policy development. One is a bit more time lenient. The negotiations one, it's often a fast process. So that's why we need to really look at how we can do that if we want the universities more involved, which is something I think we all need to do.
Yeah, I agree. That's a function of availability. But what we find is with what we're doing for the NEAR model is we have these large engagement platforms where someone like Sasha is fully funded through that project and doesn't have a teaching load. So, in the NEAR model, of the 420 researchers now engaged, half of them are PhDs, and the majority of the rest are academics employed through the research programs we're delivering. So there's this enormous availability to engage with these type of research programs, and that's the benefit of having the mass. The average academic on campus has got a 40% teaching load and a 20% service load, and they get 2 days a week on average to do on research. That becomes a bit more problematic. So yes, it is, and I think universities are changing that way. It's no longer about government funds, it's about external partner funds, and it's not about, again, it's not going back to square one. It's a case of we've got significant research programs happening across Australia, the Pacific, and around the world that we can leverage of. It's more of a translation. So you have specialists to work into those funded programs to deliver it to the Pacific, and that's the model that we're trying to build. And while I've got the mic as such, I'd like to thank Cosi and Tony for their kind words. I very much appreciate it, and I will miss you, Cosi.
Thank you very much. We've got a question. We've got a hands up from the floor. It's Setoa. So Setoa, if the technicians can allow you to unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Thank you.
Okay. The author, Stefania. It's good. No, the question is that we're having now plastic problem. I'm so happy for the work that been done with Dr. Sasha, Dr. Tricia. But all in all, now we need that scientific evidence that we have problems here with plastics. If the academia can assist us, the World Bank will assist us for a sense. Thank you.
Setoa, thank you very much, Ali. Any follow-on comments from Alan?
Well, it's just an important point that the part of academic institutions is about that peer review. It is about the evidence too, and goes back to what was previously discussed about providing evidence in the conversations and negotiations with large-scale funding bodies and also with other governments. So I think that goes towards what's the difference between consultancy and an academic base. It's another thing I point out is with partnering with the funders in the design phase means the PhDs, this information can be worked into the PhD programs. It's not simply an isolated project. That's where the concept of the embedded PhD is. And why PhD? Why do you need a PhD to provide a solution? It's a funded, very much evidence-based research that can actually train the actual candidature to be able to have an ongoing methodology or experience to actually help their community. And it's not about working from an elite point of view. It's working from a higher level base to probably assist more in those policy-informed decisions within government departments.
Alan, thanks for that comment.
Can I also add a small point? Yeah. So I think also I'm fully support what Alan is mentioning there, but to take it further, I think I was referring to these champions. The local champions is a very important concept for the Pacific, because what's happening in all these fields, we talk about e-waste or medical waste or plastic, the knowledge is changing all the time. I think someone should be a champion is necessary to keep a track of what's happening globally, because that's very important. While we are looking at the local solutions, it is very important to look at what's happening at the global level, like at what's happening at the United Nations level. We are talking about SDGs, all those areas. So unless we have a local champion, there's no drive to happen. So because the knowledge will be stagnant. So if the knowledge is stagnant, then all this we can't go forward. So so it's very important from a SPREP point of view to make sure that you nurture those champions, local champions, give them full support, and give them opportunities to upskill their knowledge, get training. I think that way it will be very, very useful exercise towards the solutions.
Thank you very much. I think that's a really nice point to end as we move into our next session, which is looking at innovations and impact of tertiary and research institutions. I think that we have had a really good chat about, and we're quite clear now about the involvement of these institutions into the waste management sector in the region. We've had a very wonderful discussion. We've got another wonderful panel that's going to come up after the break. So what I'd like to do now is just to thank Alan and Sunil for your participation and your presentations in this first session. Please, to the audience, please just to stay with us until we come back after the break, which will be a 5-minute break, and then we come back. And then we have a very wonderful panel after this. But please, if you can all join me in thanking Alan and also thanking Sunil for their efforts this afternoon. And welcome back to our second panel discussion for technical session 3. And this discussion panel will be talking about research innovation and its impact. Again, we have a very wonderful and exciting panel before us today. We've got 3. We've got, at first, let me introduce them all, and then I will invite them to make their presentations. So first up, we've got Professor Veena Sahajwala, Material Science, Faculty of Science, University of New South Wales in Australia. Professor Veena is an internationally recognized materials scientist, engineer, and inventor, revolutionizing recycling science. She is renowned for pioneering the high temperature transformation of waste in the production of a new generation of green materials at the University of New South Wales Sustainable Materials Research and Technology Center, where she is founding director. Professor Veena is the inventor of polymer injection technology known as green steel, an eco-friendly process for using recycled tires in steel production. In 2018, Veena launched the world's first e-waste micro factory TM, and in 2019, she launched her plastics and green ceramics micro factories TM, a recycling technology breakthrough. Veena is the director of the ARC Industrial Transformation Research Hub for Micro Recycling, a leading national research center that works in collaboration with industry to ensure new recycling science is translated into real work environmental and economic benefits. Veena has just been named 2022 New South Wales Australian of the Year. We are very blessed to have you here with us for the third Clean Pacific Roundtable. She will be talking very shortly about e-waste microprocessing at the University of New South Wales. Our second speaker is Dr. Thava Palanisamy, School of Engineering, University of Newcastle in Australia. Dr. Thava is leading the Environmental Plastics and Innovation Center, EPIC, at the University of Newcastle. Thava's team has established that microplastics are not just a marine problem, it's everyone's problem. It's a planetary issue. Dr. Thava was invited to speak at the Geneva Environment Network, National Academics of Science, Engineering, and Medicine on the plastics and human health issues. Quality of his research is evident through the range of publications in highly regarded international journals such as Environmental Science and Technology and Web of Science, two highly cited papers. His papers have been well cited in both traditional literature and policy documents. Dr. Thava is also an invited panel member for European Research Council, NERC, and various other international funding bodies. He will be talking this afternoon to us about Pacific microplastics research. And lastly, our third speaker for this afternoon is Dr. Chueli Veitayaki, the University of the South Pacific. Bumiraka, Dr. Chueli. Dr. Chueli is an associate professor of marine studies at the University of the South Pacific, School of Agriculture, Geography and Environment, Ocean and Natural Science, Marine Studies. He is currently he was recently, and is still now in Samoa, was the acting campus director at the USP Samoa campus in Apia. He is also the director for the International Ocean Institute, Pacific Islands based at USP. He is co-chair of the Korean South Pacific Ocean Forum and a member of the panel of experts for a sustainable ocean economy assembled by the World Resource Institute in supporting the high-level panel on sustainable ocean economy. Chueli is fascinated with human relations with their environment. He has conducted research and written articles and books on the importance of subsistence and artisanal fisheries, indigenous knowledge, traditional resources, management systems, culture, capacity building, climate change, disaster risk reduction, community-based resource management, sustainable development, the law of the sea, maritime transport, and regional cooperation in the Pacific. But today, he will be talking to us about organics, composting toilets. Those are the three panelists that we have before us this afternoon, and I'm quite excited to hear what they have to say. So I now call upon Professor Veena to give a presentation about e-waste microprocessing at the University of New South Wales. Professor Veena, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the invitation to speak here today and share with you a little bit about our journey on micro recycling, research and technology. Our work at the Smart Center at UNSW has covered partnerships with local governments, with industry, and it's really all about looking at how we can bring different kinds of technological solutions to transform waste into valuable materials and products. Our partnerships, of course, with industry, research, local governments have looked at a variety of different thematic areas, from recycling, the materials transformation, to sustainability, and ultimately, of course, showing that it can be connected to green manufacturing. This then allows us to deliver on environmental, economic, and social benefits for our communities and for, of course, our environment, and therefore delivering benefits to people. The vision at the Smart Center is very much about looking at how waste is not actually a burden if we can manage it in a way that it becomes a valuable material, if we can actually show that it can become part of manufacturing high quality products. And in doing so, we can also show that it can support local economies and it can support local jobs. This also means that if we can try to have distributed solutions, we then have to show that it will not only benefit the local regions, but also we can minimize unnecessary transportation of waste over long distances. So the work at the Smart Center has been very much about doing the fundamentals of materials, the recycling, the transformation, looking at new green solutions, effectively making products and technological advances. But we do that in partnership, in collaboration, where we can do pilot scale studies, we can do then trials and testing and evaluation. And that means that working with various partners becomes important so we can together solve these problems and deliver solutions, practical solutions that can be really transformative for the communities, because that waste can now be seen as a useful material for our environment and for our economy. One such example is green steel that we have developed at UNSW. And in this green steel technology, we're actually showing that we can use materials like waste tires and different kinds of plastics as a source of alternative carbon to coal and coke. That means that it's a win-win outcome, both from a recycling point of view, as well as, of course, for a manufacturer. If it works well, and if it does the job it's meant to do inside a steelmaking furnace, then, of course, it delivers the kinds of outcomes that they're looking for. And this is where this video now in the middle of the screen shows that the kinds of slag forming reactions that take place inside furnaces are actually doing the job, where the tires are indeed participating in the reduction of iron oxide to iron. So effectively, it is a very useful resource. And from a steelmaker's perspective, it's actually enabling the kinds of reactions that are required to indeed take place. So ultimately, what we are showing is that waste resources can indeed be reformed. So that goes beyond the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, recycle. They can actually be reformed, and they can actually show that we can apply many, many innovative solutions to managing our waste if we can look at it from the point of view of manufacturing. And what that then means is that we're starting to show that it's a valuable and a useful material. Effectively, as we start to look at all kinds of technological solutions, we're also mindful that we can indeed also solve problems at a local scale, at a small scale. And this is where microfactories come in. Microfactories are indeed decentralized. They can be really useful when you want to set up multiple microfactories, because they are not going to be as expensive as some of the traditional large-scale production factories can be. So allowing us to have a far more distributed way of manufacturing by using waste resources can deliver win-win outcomes and jobs for our communities. And in doing so, of course, what we are also showing is that different kinds of waste resources can indeed be put into our microfactories for various transformations. So here you can see that we've got a truck that's carrying tires and waste mattresses. There are piles of different kinds of waste materials, and this is indeed one of the regional towns that we have set up our microfactory in called Cootamundra in New South Wales. And in this microfactory, what we are doing is we are using things like waste mattress flock, and that then becomes part of the feedstock along with waste glass to manufacture green ceramics. And what this is basically showing is that it can be quite a complex array of different kinds of textile waste and ceramic materials and plastic materials that we all have to deal with. So how would we ultimately come together through collaboration and through partnership is by actually working with various local governments, with various industries, and indeed thinking about the whole circularity of materials. These kinds of circular solutions means that governments and indeed businesses can work together and partner and collaborate with researchers to find useful solutions. And these useful solutions are not just about recycling, but indeed about manufacturing high quality products. So basically, it means that when you are looking at the kinds of products that you can produce from these microfactories, it's about ultimately putting it into the hands of end users. So if the end users, for example, with green ceramics, can be people who are developing housing solutions, sustainable housing solutions, construction, all of these can actually use products like our green ceramics. And this is an example that I will share with you now. In our microfactory, we are not only, of course, producing green ceramics, but indeed with our green manufacturing of plastics, we're taking our plastic waste, converting them into plastic filaments and using them, as you can see on the screen, for 3D printing. So effectively, again, if a microfactory wanted to set up different kinds of modules, some for our green ceramics as an example, some for plastics, you can actually imagine that each of these modules can be operated on a relatively small scale, but you can then afford to have multiple modules, and they can be operated by different operators. So thinking about how various participants, various businesses and government participants can contribute to addressing how we look at the challenge of transforming waste into useful resources. And here are the kinds of examples that we have actually shown that we have used green ceramics in. So the kinds of pictures you're seeing there are floor tiles, for example, from our green ceramics. That combination of waste glass and textiles is in fact made locally. And indeed, our industry partner here, Mervac, has put that into this particular apartment of theirs. We also have, of course, other furnishings. So you can see in the kitchen area, there's the table in the picture. Then you've got the splashback in the kitchen. So you can have various traditional ceramics indeed replaced with green ceramics that are fit for purpose, and they're designed and customized so that the local character is reflected. So for example, if the local requirements are to recycle some old textiles and uniforms or some other colored fabrics, they can all be reflected in the kinds of solutions that can be produced and implemented in these kinds of microfactory solutions. So basically, microfactories are really all about showing that they might be small solutions, but they can have big impact for our planet. It is very much about decentralizing and showing that these kinds of solutions can indeed be globally adopted, creating those local jobs and supporting local economies. And they can indeed provide all kinds of cost-effective solutions in the long term to produce green materials and products. And in doing so, of course, what we are doing is finding absolutely fantastic, innovative pathways to transform our waste into useful products, whether they are for manufacturing or whether they are for our built environment, either way, and a whole range of other possible scenarios as we work towards, of course, finding out what other applications are possible, and that waste can indeed be transformed through microfactories into a whole range of useful green materials. So therefore, we can show that waste is not actually a burden, but rather it could be a really valuable resource, which is a win-win outcome for our planet and for our people. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vina, for the presentation. And I believe we have Ms. Romanu Hussein, who will be staying with us to respond to any questions in the Q&A section. But just to thank you very much, Dr. Vina, for the presentation and for sharing with us such a wonderful work that you are doing on microprocessing at the university and its impact. And we'd like to congratulate you again for the 2022 the recent award that you have just received. Thank you very much. We'll go now to the second speaker, and we've got Dr. Thava, who will be talking to us about specific microplastics research. And I just wanted to add that we also have Malele, who will be staying with us to answer the Q&A after Dr. Thava's presentation. So Dr. Thava, over to you. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. This is Dr. Thava Palanisamy from the Plastic Research Team at the University of Newcastle. Marine pollution is a significant threat to Pacific region. While it has a global impact, the effects will be more strongly felt by small Pacific states. South Pacific Ocean alone estimated to receive 491 billion pieces of marine plastics from the terrestrial environment. And these pieces mainly originate from South America, Indonesia, Australia, and New Zealand. Plastic research team at the University of Newcastle is one of the largest in Australia, consists of 15 members, including 10 PhD students and 5 postdoctoral fellows. And our team focuses on understanding the fate and behavior of plastics and microplastics in the environment, and we use that information to conduct the advanced human health risk assessment and develop solutions to stop the plastic pollution. Major outcomes from our research in the last 5 years has been presented at the National Academy of Sciences and Geneva Environmental Network under UNEP, also at the National Plastic Summit, Australia. Our research outputs have attracted more than 2.5 billion media hits in the last 5 years. We are also proud to have contributed to the Your Plastic Diet community tool, which is now accessed by more than 2 million people to understand the plastic exposure. Plastic is a multi-compartment issue. We need multidisciplinary approach to understand the risk. We had to conduct a detailed sampling and characterization risk assessment, which requires access to field and advanced analytical facilities. And the project scope for Pacific Plastics Program was developed in 2017 in collaboration with SPRUP, based on the knowledge gaps relevant to Pacific region. And through University of Newcastle SPRUP collaboration, we have recruited a PhD student from Fiji, Mr. Malili Rokamatu, to look at the effects of plastics on marine environment, food web, and its impact on health systems in Fiji. The overall objective of Malili's thesis is to investigate and assess the source of microplastic pollution in the selected aquatic locations in Fiji, and understand its implications to the environment and human health. Our study started with the baseline understanding of the microplastic pollution in the Fiji environment. So Malili has conducted a comprehensive sampling program around Fiji coastal environment to sample microplastics in the beach and also in the wastewater. So sample was conducted following Australian Microplastic Assessment Program methodology. So basically quadrant method. And these samples have been processed in Fiji itself. And then advanced characterization was conducted in our lab at the Newcastle University. And these data has actually formed a significant research paper for Malili's thesis. Unlike traditional thesis approach, where you will have a series of chapters and may or may not have publication, but in our team, what we aim to do is to submit thesis by peer-reviewed publication. So in Malili's case, so we expect to get at least 5 peer-reviewed publication. So we have already communicated one review paper to a high-impact journal, and then 2 other research papers are under preparation. We expect to submit before Christmas, and then 4th paper is under writing. So once published, and this will give a comprehensive scientific evidences, peer-reviewed, published in a leading international journal, and this is also filling a knowledge gaps for the Pacific region. So with that, we'll also one of the major highlights of our collaboration in the Pacific is the strategic engagement and collaboration established with the leading organizations such as PREP, BirdLife, WWF, Fiji Water, and University of Fiji, Sugar Research Institute of Fiji. And their contribution and support is highly valuable for executing all our field work and understanding the local environment. And we are looking to expand our network and improve our contribution. And with this, thank you so much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with you all.
Thava, thank you very much for that presentation about some of the innovative research that your team is doing on microplastics. Thank you very much. And we welcome our colleague Malele, who will be staying behind for the Q&A section. If I could request the participants, if you have any questions or any comments, please put them onto the chat. So we will be able to respond to those in the Q&A section. I'd like to now go on to our third and our final speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Chueli Vetayaki, to give his presentation on organics composting toilets. Dr. Chueli, Naka, and the floor is yours. Naka.
Greetings and welcome to this presentation on waste management at the USP campus, Samoa. It's a pleasure to be with you all, and I hope you will find the presentation of use. Starting in 2019, we embarked on a campaign to greening our campus. The purpose was to try and clear our campus farmland of bushes and invasive trees that were beginning to dominate portions of the farmland. We also wanted to remove solid waste and non-biodegradable items from the farm. And we collaborated with the Ministry of Natural Environment and Natural Resources and Environment, SPREP, and the Scientific Research Organization of Samoa in trying to find ways to safely dispose of chemicals in our possession at the campus. Unfortunately, we were told that such waste, chemicals, they only disposed of overseas. So we need to generate enough in order to justify a special shipment for our waste. And in that regard, we are all together having to find safe storage for these old chemicals until the shipment is ready to leave Samoan shores. In terms of the solid waste from the farmlands, in the 3 weeks we spent on cleanups, in September of 2019, we sent 8 truckloads of trash to the landfill, showing how serious the problem of non-biodegradable waste in our farmlands. The other initiative that was part of our Greening the Campus campaign was to plant native trees, fruit trees, to replace the invasive species that were on the campus. And again, we are happy to get the assistance from MNRE as well as from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. They provided us with the technical advice and of course the seedlings that we needed to do the tree planting that we wanted. So during the first lockdown period in Samoa, in the first semester of 2019, we had the campus closed for about 4 weeks. The members of the Common Students Association helped cleared and planted 7 acres of land with native trees. That was a big contribution. These photos show the beginning of our campaign to clear up and reclaim some of our farmlands. So these photos on the top were the situation then when we first started, and the bottom pictures show the situation today. Yes, we are happy with the progress that we have made, and are thankful to our partners for their assistance and support. We also now have been supported by MNRE with seedlings to plant sandalwood. We have about 1,000 trees on the campus. They're beautiful decorations today. We hope in time to come will become a source of much needed income for the campus. In terms of agricultural research, we are working with our partners at the University of Melbourne, Tuki campus, Lincoln University from Canterbury, New Zealand, and SPC, trying to promote, do more research on this new approach, conservational agriculture and sustainable intensification. According to our experts, this is the kind of agriculture that we hope would be most suitable for smallholder farmers as we try and find appropriate farming arrangements that will serve us better in the future with prevailing climate change conditions. A good feature, an interesting feature of this type of agriculture is the integration of customary good practices with modern science-based inputs that can now be available because of research. We also have collaborated with our contractors who have demonstrated the proper use of some of the old tanks and green waste that they collect from cleaning our compound. They now have operated this nice vegetable beds planted on composting soil from the green waste that they now are managing very well. The latest to the addition of innovative demonstration is this piece on the close to the center of the campus, on the roadside in front of the buildings. There is this circle which they have now added a bit of composting material to, and are planting eggplants and spring onion, some lettuce, and of course the fringe is covered in pineapple. A beautiful garden, but one that that people can eat from when it is ready. We also have worked hard to reuse and recycle a lot of the old building materials and the waste that we generate. In this case, all filing cabinets and containers, ice boxes, even old washing machines have been used to grow vegetables as well as flowers to beautify this part of the campus, which is dominated by this this concrete structure that must have been part of the building that is now gone. All building materials are used to support plants that are now placed on top of areas that are too rocky for us to plant the plants into the ground. Even this wash station that has been erected around the campus because of the preparation for COVID pandemic, all materials are being reused from where they used to be in the past. So we are trying to minimize our expenses by reusing all the old equipment that can still be used today. Of course, we also using some structures for beautifying certain parts of the campus. We are working in partnership with the Samoa Stationery and Bookshop in recycling our e-waste. They are very generous with the offer to collect the e-waste from the campus and be responsible for shipping it abroad. This is a big relief for us given the amount of e-waste that we generate. Lastly is an exciting new edition which takes us even further where we have been. We now are in possession of this wonderful machine that would allow us to recycle some kinds of plastic. This is a generous gift from Ella and Andrew, who have been using the machine to conduct awareness and training to school students and communities. Unfortunately, Ella and Andrew are now returning to Australia, and they have approached us as to whether we would like to continue to use the machine that they had brought over from Australia. Of course, we agreed without hesitation. We were very happy to further develop what we've done in terms of managing our waste. The lesson from a few examples that I have given is that waste can also be a resource, and for proper waste management, we need to work in partnerships because our collective effort certainly would always be better than our individual contributions. With those words, I thank you very much for listening, and I wish you the very best. Thank you very much.
Tertiary, thank you very much for that very practical presentation about making use and being innovative about the use of your resources to making much practical things like growing your own vegetables and making use of the resources especially during this time where you cannot really go out and buy stuff, or you probably just need to make do with what you have. So we thank you for that, and that sort of inspires us to not only we can look around us, I guess, around the SPREP campus, and there's a lot of things that we can do to help ourselves as well. Thank you very much. Now we are going to the question and answer section. Please, if you have any comments or things, please just add to the chat. Add to the chat if you have any questions for the three speakers, for Ms. Hussein, or for Malele, or for Dr. Chirelli. Okay, I've got a question on the chat, or a question has just come to me. So the question is for Malele. It's a Bulvanaka Malele. If the question is, if you could just share with us what are your findings so far in your research, please.
Thank you, everyone. So first of all, I would like to thank SPREP for including me into this chat group for question and answers. So in terms of my research, I've been focusing on microplastics and its impact, and also looking at the different sources of microplastics in the Pacific, especially in Fiji. So lately I've been focusing on microplastics in wastewater treatment here in Fiji. So basically in that part, I've been looking into the presence of microplastics in the wastewater plant. So we have two major wastewater treatment sources here in Fiji, which is in Suva and in Lotoka, the eastern part and western part of Viti Levu or Fiji. And yeah, so it's a comprehensive study, which is which will be a better understanding, will give a better understanding for the people of Fiji in terms of the different stages or the different treatment methods that we have here in Fiji in terms of wastewater, and the outcome of that treatment in terms of microplastics being sourced out, or in terms of it being an effluent and been produced, gone out into the environment. So this will break down a good picture of what we have in Fiji and what we can improve in terms of treatment of wastewater, and wastewater being a source of microplastics to the oceans. And the other part is I've been also looking into the occurrence and distribution of microplastics in the foreshore that we have, and I've been focusing on the western part of Fiji. So basically it's looking at the urban and the rural areas, and also the study will then fall into metals, or the heavy metals, and all the pollutants that associate itself with the microplastics, and the possibility of it affecting human health. So these are the two major parts. And also I've been looking into the cooking method, which is basically looking at the presence of microplastics in our food, and the possibility that we will have a different the different impacts of microplastics once if its presence in our food being ingested in human health, and what can be the cause of these pollutants to the human health. So these are some of the major research that I've been conducting here in the Fiji, and also hoping that it will represent most of the issues that we have been facing in the Pacific Islands. So this will be something that I hope that will contribute, like for example, for the wastewater treatment, it will contribute to the Water Authority of Fiji in terms of looking into how we actually, the methods of treatment that we have and the amount of plastic being produced and what we can do in the future to improve the system that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We've got a couple of questions for Ms. Hussain, and the questions are on the chat. I'm sure you can see that. Let me read them out to you so that the others can hear before you respond. So the question is, what do you see as best value easy win for microprocessing of problem waste in the Pacific? And what advice would you give to countries to realize these opportunities? Mr. Hussain, over to you. You're muted. Could you unmute yourself, please? Thanks. Sorry.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm representing here Professor Veena. I'm working in a smart center as a postdoc. Yes, I have got two questions actually. The second question is, my question is for Professor Shahjawala. Would the microfactories for e-waste and plastic be suitable to small economies? What would be the feedstock requirements? These two questions actually are very much interrelated. So what is the efficacy of microprocessing, and what would be the feedstock for micro factories? So if we look at the microfactory has several modules which can handle different type of wastes. So we already have established two microfactories, basically three microfactories, but two types. One will handle electronic waste, and another is handling different kind of mixed waste like glass, plastics, and different kind of textiles, etc., for green ceramic production. So the feedstock for the microfactories will be completely waste. Feedstocks are coming from waste. In the conventional industries, what happened while we are looking at the conventional e-waste industries, they are using very giant machineries, and they need a lot of collection of similar kind of materials. So handling some multi-material waste like electronic waste in a small device is, you will have plastic, you will have metal, you will have ceramics, everything together. So those small giant recycling machineries cannot handle this kind of electronic waste, multi-material waste. So in our microfactory, we have developed micro recycling science which can handle each of these materials separately in a micro scale. Say, for example, in our microfactory, we use thermal micronizing technology to recover metal, only metal from the electronic waste, and our 3D printing facilities. We are also recycling electronic waste, plastics from electronic waste to produce plastic filaments, which are using in the 3D printing. So we can micromanage when we are talking about a microfactory, small scale microfactory. We look into the value, not the volume. So always our focus will be what would be the end product, what would be the value of the end product, whether it is worthy to do recycling or not. So based on this conception, we built up our recycling science, and we use different kind of waste to process and different kind of, and produce different kind of materials and products for the end user. Another thing is the microfactory facilities can be established anywhere in the world near the waste generation site. So it's a very small microfactory. it needs very, in UNSW, we have a microfactory that is established in 50 square meter. So it could be established in a very small space, and it could have customized module which can handle a specific kind of waste. So it could be established near the waste generation site. So here the transportation of the waste is not needed. So normally we are transporting our waste in different places for further processing. So this microfactory solution will facilitate us to establish small scale factories near the waste generation site, and which have different kind of modules to handle different kind of waste, to produce different kind of products. And yes, the feedstock will be waste, like electronic waste, plastic waste, metal scrap, or any kind of food packaging. This kind of different kind of waste we are handling in our microfactories. I hope I have answered your query.
Maybe just one more on the just on the second half of that second question, Dr. Hussein, and there would be, because there's another question that says that are these portable? So I think the question is that how applicable and how affordable would this be for small economies, small islands?
It is actually very much applicable, and it is very much affordable, because while we are developing our micro-recycling science to be implemented in the microfactory, we always think about the cost efficiency. So yes, we are doing research in our lab, but our research always look at the scalability, whether it could be implemented commercially in microfactories. So this is our main view. And yes, our microfactories are commercially established in different places, as you can see in Vina's presentation. One microfactory has been established in regional New South Wales, Kutamandra, which is handling different kind of textile and mattresses and plastics to generate green ceramic. And our industry partner Mirvac has used those green ceramic in their apartments already. So these are very much affordable, and cost-wise, these are very much because we are not using any kind of giant machineries, any kind of big facilities. And also it is affordable in the sense of transportation, because we can establish these small scale microfactories locally. We don't need to depend on the raw materials coming from different places or different countries. We can establish that this small scale microfactory anywhere in Australia, anywhere in the world. So it is very much affordable to be established in the regional communities, or in the communities where transportation is the main problem. And also it can look at the end users, the requirement, local requirement of the people could be met by these microfactories, because you can establish that locally, so it can focus on the requirement of the local people, and end user could be local person or local industries like this. And yes, it's cost-wise, it is very much affordable.
Maybe what we'll do is that we've got a couple more questions for you, but I'll ask a question to Dr. Tertiary, and then we can come back to the questions that are on the screen for you. And then we've got also a hands up from the audience as well. So Dr. Tertiary, the question for you is that, like, you have a lot of innovative projects with partners. What makes for successful partnerships with universities in the Pacific, Dr. Tertiary?
Well, I think, thanks very much, Tony, and it's nice to have been part of this I think for any partnership, it comes down to individuals, our organization.
Sorry, Dr. Chuele is just frozen. Any help from the technical team, please?
I think it's possible that this is an internet connection on his side. So maybe we can come back to him if he's able to reconnect.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'll ask the next question, which is for, maybe the next question would be to Malele, and then we'll go to Setoa. So the next question for Malele is, what qualifications do people need to join your plastics research center as a PhD student?
Thank you. So from my understanding, the experience that I went through is having a degree or bachelor in science, basically environmental biology or chemistry will do, and a master's in science to go through to the PhD program from a recognized institution. But as per the discussion that we have in terms of educations and the program or the courses that are now being tried to integrate with the system that Australian universities have. So the experience as well, the work experience do carry some of the weight, and that can be included in some of the universities. Like, for example, the University of Newcastle have also considered some of the experience as well as the credentials of your education in terms of the qualifications that we have in terms of masters in science and bachelor degrees. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Malele. We'll go to Setoa, who's asking a question, and then we'll come back to the last question for you, Dr. Hussain. So the technical team, if you can unmute Setoa and he'll ask his question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Acknowledging the presence of Sifa and Leota. And that my question is that, not really a question, is that it's about plastic. What are we gonna do about it? Now, for honest, we us in the Pacific, we only contribute about 1.3% of mismanaged plastic in the global level. And what are we gonna do about it? We don't, because I'm a vocal on a global level arena on plastic. So we don't manufacture plastic here in the Pacific. And just want to ask if we can come together, stick together, Pacific, because we are recipient of those climate change and plastic pollution right now. So we need the global community to come together, even the Pacific, us all. That's my only comment. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you very much, Ali Mumua, for that question. I think you sort of answered that question yourself as well, is that like we all need to work together. And I think that, like with this partnership, we will continue to do that. I'll go to Dr. Thava, please, for your comment to the question before. Thank you. Sorry, Thava, you're muted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. The question is very good, actually, and timely. So any waste, first step is to reduction of waste. So we have to reduce our consumption. So we have to reduce our use. So the process starts from there. Then only we talk about recycling. So we cannot continue to use the material at this scale and expect industry to recycle. That's not going to solve the problem. So we have to reduce the use of material from the start, and then we try to manage the complicated material which we cannot replace or reduce to reuse or recycle. And to do that, plastic is a community issue and public issue. It's not just industry. So one of our outcomes I presented in the slide is that your plastic diet. And we come up with a risk communication idea that people can potentially ingest around credit card size of plastic. That is not to scare people, that is to hit the plastic guilt. So that every time I use plastic unnecessarily, I will be thinking about the credit card, that, okay, it's going to get into my future generation. So that's the way. And then we'll get into these complex plastics where we cannot replace, where we'll tap into recycling program, which Professor Veena Sagajwala presented very well. There are technologies out there to manage. But when talk about microplastics, once it get into the wastewater, it's already a complicated issue. A lot of pollutions, especially chemical and biological hazards with the COVID. So there, the technology requirement is that it's not a simple filtration or it's not a simple biological. We need an advanced technology in such a way we not only remove these toxic pollutants, also we actually produce a high quality water that can be reused in agriculture. So that's my comment.
Dr. Thaba, just want to thank you very much for that response. And we're totally agree. And I think that, it's I think it's a problem that is being faced all over the world around circular economy and looking at the solutions from the cradle to grave and so on. I'll just go to the question for Dr. Hussain. And the question is, are there any human health consequences from the process, please?
Always, when we are talking about micro recycling, we at first try to minimize the human health consequence that the conventional recycling systems are doing. So if we look at our green steel manufacturing, which is not micro scale, which is macro scale, one person has, I think Dr. Petty has told that, okay, one small microfactory can't handle the whole things. Yes, there are several. Microfactory is one side. Another side is we also work with the big industry, say, for example, steel manufacturer. And now I want to give our example of our patented technology that have been used in 5 countries, including Australia, commercially, which is transforming car tires into the replacement of coke and coal. So while we have seen that in the steel manufacturing, while we are using coke and coal, it needs more material. But if we replace some of the coke and coal with waste plastic or car tires, the carbon dioxide emission has reduced almost 30%, and that has been proven. Why? Because some of the plastic is a very good source of hydrogen, and reduction with the hydrogen is much more cleaner compared to using the conventional method that people are using, coking coal to reduce iron ore to produce iron. So that is the example of our green manufacturing, a green steel manufacturing. So it's always our research always tries to reduce the health consequence. So overnight, we cannot eliminate plastic without a proper infrastructure. We cannot eliminate plastic from our economy completely. Yes, in some of the places we can eliminate, but yes, I would add with Professor Thaba that we have to think at the beginning in terms of also not only user point of view, in terms of manufacturing point of view. Some plastics you can recycle over and over, the molecules will not break down, but other plastics, like say for example, polystyrene, people are using in the fabrics. So when plastics are recycled and goes to the fabrics, it cannot recycled back to plastic, and it is going to our water bodies. So what kind of recycling solution we should choose? That is the main question. We cannot choose a short-term recycling solution, which we think that, okay, it is good for short-term, but we have to think about the long-term consequences. Say, for example, car tires is going to the road-based or construction-based work, which is the main, one of the main sources of microplastic in Australia. So we need to rethink about also about this kind of recycling science, this kind of recycling procedure, which have long-term consequences. So yes, user point of view, we have to reduce, and also the manufacturer of the plastics from the very beginning has to develop the kind of product that could be recycled safely. Otherwise, we need to eliminate that. While choosing the recycling method, perfect recycling method is also very much important, because as I have given the example already, that when waste plastics is going to the yarn of our clothing, it is not, it is the one of the main source of the micro nanoplastics. So we need to rethink about this kind of recycling solution as well. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Dr. Hussain. And although I believe we could talk for much longer on this topic and on the, the impact of the research and its usefulness, and what are the issues and how do we address these issues around plastics and so on. But I think I have to bring this session to close. And as a moderator, I've been given several notices from the side. What I'd like to do is just to do a quick wrap up and to thank both the panelists from the discussion 1 and the discussion 2 for the very informative and interesting discussion and presentations this afternoon. I'd like to also thank, first I'd like to thank Professor Sunil Hairat for his presentation at the start around the causes of waste management. And I think my takeaway from there was that the need to have local champions. And I think he summed it up properly in saying that, it's not in your discussions with communities, it's not about trying to educate them, but trying to collaborate with them. And I think that's a really nice way that my main takeaway from your talk today, apart from many others. To Professor Alan Broadfoot, I think that the Pacific Node Initiative is clearly a very innovative and one initiative that we find that is a great success, and one that we value very much at the Secretariat, and I'm sure the region does as well, around Pacific people for the people, for the Pacific regions, right? So that was my main takeaway from Alan's discussion this morning. For Dr. Vena and for Dr. Hussain, I think that the green steel, and I think from taking my takeaway from that is that it's applicable for small economies, particularly in its focus on high quality products, and it's a win-win, which ultimately results in the reduced waste in the environment. And so we'd like to thank you, Dr. Hussain, for the Q&A session. For Dr. Thava and for Malele, I think around the microplastics projects, and also around the many innovative plastics work that you are doing at the University of Newcastle. To Dr. Shirelli, I think that the cleanup at the USP campus around the organics, the reuse of the campus equipment, the ways to address invasives within the campus compound are very practical and very innovative that we can all relate to. So working at the local level, at the community level. So with those various presentations, I think that the takeaways from this is the understanding of the impacts of partnership with tertiary institutions in the waste management area, understanding the role of tertiary understanding the role of tertiary institutions in the Pacific waste management, that partnerships are key and can take many forms, but I think the basis of it is a partnership where both share the rewards and also share the risks as well. I recall the expression that was shared yesterday around a clean Pacific environment requires a clean Pacific mindset and a clean Pacific body and clean Pacific people. And I think that this is a start. I think this journey starts with us and with the capacity building of our people in the region, local communities, local champions. And finally, just some of the other highlights is that capacity development opportunities there are opportunities for formal degrees and short course accreditation with the tertiary institutions, that the research of the Pacific by the Pacific innovation and expertise will remain in the Pacific. And I think we've seen a lot of examples of that with capacity training courses and short courses and the Pacific Node Initiative. I think that there's evidence of Pacific involvement in peer-reviewed journals, outputs that from our people that inform national and global policy. We can see a lot of evidence of that. And lastly, that the technology and innovation, particularly for what we've heard from Dr. Vina and from Dr. Hussain, but micro-recycling, microplastics, and also from composting are very useful things for us to all take away. So with that, I'd like to thank the two panelists. I'd like to thank the participants for taking part. And I'd like to thank Dr. Shasha Fuller for the lead on this, and also to thank all our technical team and our team here. So thank you very much. Have a blessed afternoon, day, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Nakavale Faftalava.